I have heard that the Rosary is supposed to be our greatest weapon and that it's the most powerful prayer after the Mass. But what exactly is so great about the Rosary, and how is it the most powerful prayer and the greatest weapon? Thanks, Jared in Singapore.
Hey, thanks, Jared. I appreciate the question. Well, you're not going to hear me defend the thesis that the Rosary is the most powerful prayer or our greatest weapon after the Mass. I'm not going to defend that thesis. I understand that there are Catholics that take that position. That is a private theological opinion. They're entitled to it. You are not obligated to share it. Okay? The prayer that is the most efficacious after the Mass is the faithful, penitent, contrite, persevering prayer to God for the graces necessary for our salvation. The faithful, contrite, penitent, persevering prayer, there's a lot of P's in there,
Yeah.
asking God for those graces that are necessary for my salvation. That is the prayer that God will infallibly answer in the affirmative.
Sounds
Right.
very humble.
Right, exactly. And therefore it's the most efficacious. Jesus, well, he didn't need contrition, exemplified this in his own prayer at the Garden of Gethsemane, which was, take this cup from me, but not my will, but thine be done. Or Blessed Virgin Mary, who says, be it done to me according to thy word. 10,000 rosaries for some intention that does not accord with the will of God is worth less than this cup of water that I have on my desk right here.
I am scandalized by your answer to an emailed question regarding the Rosary as the greatest prayer after the Mass. You posed your answer in such a way that sounded disrespectful and dismissive that strikes at the heart of Marian devotion, the Most Holy Rosary. Your analogy conflated your comparison. One is a humble man's prayer, the other is 10,000 rosaries not in accord with God's will. Really? How about comparing apples to apples instead of oranges? For one, Mary is in complete union with God's will. Even if a rosary was prayed not in accord with God's will, her intercessory power with God will cut to the heart of the matter and make it efficacious nonetheless. His answer, yes, no, or not now, is his holy will. Flipping your analogy, if a truly humble man is perfectly contrite, yet utters a prayer not in accord with God's will, it follows that his won't be worth that cup of water that you mentioned, right? And that's from James.
Yeah, thanks. So maybe we should go back to the context. I'm trying to get my head wrapped around the original question, but I don't remember what the original questioner asked precisely. But
Okay.
it was about the efficacy of the Rosary and his subjective state of mind, I think.
I believe so,
okay?
yeah.
And my answer, what I intend to convey, is that there's nothing magical about the Rosary per se, right? Or any particular Catholic devotion. I don't care if it's the Rosary or the Divine Office or even the Mass, for that matter, where the ritual itself, even functioning ex opere operato, can remedy the fault of charity in our own hearts, right? So the Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph, I believe it's 2211, but it's around that part of the Catechism, in discussing the vice of superstition, says that even the sacraments themselves can be used superstitiously if we presume that the ritual action will do the job without our proper disposition.
If I can
Okay.
jump in,
Yeah.
I'm reminded of and this has happened time and time again, drug dealers who die wearing like 15 scapulars, thinking that is going to keep them in safe territory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all the doctors of the Church confirm this. I mean, Francis de Sales wrote a famous treatise called Introduction to the Devout Life. And he begins by disabusing people of false notions of what counts as a devotion or piety. And he says, look, it's not how many prayers you recite, no matter what their form. It's not how many alms you give. It's not how much you fast. There's no activity of the Christian life that intrinsically counts as a devotion if you lack the true love of God and neighbor. Mm-hmm. And all of those other things are means, not ends. And it is perfectly possible for any specific devotional action itself to be sinful if your intent is sinful, if your heart is not right with God or neighbor. And Christ himself talks about this. If you're going to bring your gift to the altar, this is, of course, in the context of Jewish temple worship, if you bring your gift to the altar and you have something against your brother, first go be reconciled to your brother,
Yes.
and then come back and make your gift. Okay? Now, you made a deeper assertion about the nature of Our Lady's intercession as it relates to our intent. Okay? And you suggested that even if our intent were deficient, now you didn't say sinful. That's really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about sin. I'm not talking about, some fault of awareness.
Yeah.
Okay. But your suggestion was that if there's some deficiency in our intent, that Mary would make up the difference, as it were. I'm familiar with this theological opinion, and it's credited to St. Louis de Montfort. Okay. But I will add, that's not dogmatic teaching. That's de Montfort's particular private theological opinion. And if his opinion is taken in a way that would suggest that we don't need charity, then that would be incorrect.
Yeah.
Right? We have to have charity. Now, there are prayers that God will answer without charity. In particular, the sinner's prayer, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner.
Yeah.
Right? When I go into the confessional, if I'm not in the state of grace, if I'm in the state of mortal sin, if God doesn't hear the penitent prayer of the mortal sinner, then no one ever gets out of mortal sin. Right? But when James says the prayer of a righteous man availeth much, he's really talking about charity in the soul. Right? And Christ makes this distinction so many times. He says, look, if you pray on street corners to be seen by men, then you have your reward in full.
Yeah.
And if we were to translate that into a modern Catholic idiom, if you go to daily Mass and pray the Rosary to be seen by men, you're getting your reward in full. Does anyone do that? Yeah, they do it.